Welcome. You are at the CCC.
Where there are no outside issues. My name is Anthony. I'm an addict and an alcoholic, another bozo on the bus, and I care about you.
Yes, and I'm LouiLou. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm recovered for crystal meth and alcohol, and I am always in search of balance. And each week we strive to foster a brave space where we can engage in conversation centered around topics of recovery.
And our intention is to hold and inspire better spaces for more people in recovery by tackling issues sometimes used to separate us.
Yes, but before we do that, please like, share, and comment on this episode and rate us.
Rate us only if it's 5 stars. I don't know if you can give more than 5 stars.
I know.
Leave comments if they're good.
Give 5 stars and come back and get 5 more. Or tell a friend.
And now the disclaimer: the thoughts and opinions expressed on at the CCC are as alone. We do not represent anyone but ourselves. In other words, we're just a couple of friends behind a mic here to entertain you. And of course, everything that we talk about is for general information purposes only.
Absolutely.
Welcome
back.
Welcome back.
How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. It's kind of cold in this fucking room.
Yeah, exactly. It's like
my nose is cold.
I have it in my rider that the room is going to be a certain temperature and that I'm only going to get purple M&Ms.
Purple M&Ms.
I know, exactly.
Yeah, my nose is cold. My hands are cold. I have a jacket on. I mean, all in the name of recovery.
I know, exactly.
All in the name of recovery. How have you been?
I've been good, actually. Yeah, it's like I know, exactly. You know what? Honestly, I have when you have a different take on, like, I don't always expect everything to be rosy.
Yeah.
And so, in every life, some rain's got to fall, but right now it's not falling for me. I feel good. It's like, I feel like I'm in the center. I'm a pillar. I'm a pillar on the bus.
We miss you, Bonnie Violet.
I know. It's like, what is it?
Wiki. Yeah. Should we jump into today's topic?
Let's jump in.
Okay, today's
Wait,
topic.
how are you doing? You didn't.
I think I'm
You
good.
mentioned your physical, but it's like, how are you doing emotionally?
Well, yeah, emotionally, I'm doing pretty good. Still doing interviews. I'm almost done.
Nice.
Yeah, but I'm feeling really strong, really focused, very encouraged by the natural unfolding of my life.
Oh.
Well,
okay. Oh, wow. That was dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, things are really coming together nicely. Yeah, I'll be graduating in a few months. I'll be Dr. Lucas soon.
I love that. It's like, I love that you are realizing you were like childhood or like dream.
This is listen, it's so, I think when I was in the 5th grade, my 5th grade yearbook says, when Anthony grows up, he wants to be a psychologist.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean,
I love that.
Isn't it amazing? Yeah. I don't know what 5th grader is thinking that, but I did. And here I am living that out. I firmly believe, I believe this at my core that this is why I was put on earth. I think I'm living out my life's purpose. I could not fucking be happier.
Okay. Well, now that I've heard that, I'm not in a good space. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. It's like, I am doing today the best that I can, and that is really cool.
Yeah. I mean, same here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I was actually talking to a sponsee about this today. I had a sponsee who said, Anthony, I'm afraid of sounding stupid in front of you. And I'm like,
too late. Yeah, you're all waka.
Yeah. And I thought to myself, like, my first thought was like, what am I doing? But I'm like, I'm not doing anything.
Yeah.
And he goes, well, you come off as just like so put together. And I said, listen, that's not what's happening inside of me. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes I feel incredibly unstable. And, I appreciated him saying that. And I said, I've felt like that in different spaces, but that's not what's happening here.
Absolutely. That ties nicely into our last week's conversation about being impeccable with your word.
Yeah.
It's like I'll lift and encourage. I mean, it's nice when people think that there's something going on that's not going on, but like being able to be honest. And that's where, back to the authenticity. Like, I'm not going to just, thanks. I'm amazing. No, you know what? Honey, I'm going through the same things.
Yeah.
It's just, sometimes the way that I present is this is how I cope.
Yeah. You know what I like to say about like all the academic stuff is that it's just drag.
Yeah.
This is my drag. You know, like
drag.
my drag.
And it's a drag. Waka, waka, waka. Wait, hold on. What's that? It's like
which one is it? No, not that one. Where is it? No. Oh, it's that one. Wait, we'll do yeah, you know, it's my drag, you know. I've always been a nerd, you know, and I like gauging and stuff like that, but it's just drag, you know. It's just like, it's a fraction of my life. It's not who I am. I was actually talking to someone about this the other day. I was like, you know, if for whatever reason we entered like the apocalypse came,
we're on our way.
Yeah.
And then keeping it real.
Yeah. You know, if we were stripped of all of our titles, if we were stripped of all of our identities, we would be forced to exist, meeting our foundational needs, and we would, you know, and so that's the place that I operate from, you know, like, yeah, like I have these degrees, but that doesn't make me any better or any smarter than anyone. All that means is that I've had access to certain spaces and certain socialization, but
absolutely.
That, you know, that doesn't mean
you have an openness. Like there are some people like, and we talked about it, I think a couple of weeks ago, we had linguistic like terrorism.
Yeah.
Like there's some people that they're so intelligent and they weaponize it against like other people. Yeah. And it, like, I think the key is like to be open. It's like, it's again, going back to like, we want to lift folks. And, there was something I was going to say, but it may come up like later.
Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing is like, I don't think a person needs a formal education to do meaningful work or to engage in healing. Yeah. Some of the brightest people I've met and I know are like sex workers, are drug dealers, or used to be drug dealers. You know, my mom, who is, you know, my grandmother, who is 80 years old, who stopped school in the 6th grade, who, you know, has lived in the project her entire life. Like she is one of the most brilliant people I've ever met.
Absolutely.
You know, she may not sound the way that like other like quote unquote intelligent people sound like, but
I think when you can communicate with folks, when you can help, when people, you can connect, because I always feel like true genius is being able to kind of relate and
that's right.
To all folks.
That's right. That's right. And not to put too fine of a point on this, but that's one of the things that I learned, and being mentored by people is like when I was young and I was like, you know, like I was living in the hood and I was like working really hard to seem credible because like I didn't come from money and I was surrounded in some instances by people who came from a lot of money and had all the resources and you know, their parents were like working professionals. I was working really hard to like learn how to code switch in those spaces in order for me to feel like I could survive, in order for me not to feel like shit in those spaces. And I adopted this like weird way of being in certain spaces where I felt like I had to be like very analytical and I had to sound smart all the time. And really I was just incredibly insecure. And what's been phenomenal is I've, you know, like throughout the years, I've met mentors who are like, knock that shit off. Like that's not how we connect. That's not how the world operates. That's not how the world talks. And I needed someone to say like, you don't have to do this song and dance in order to prove something to anyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which leads us to today's topic. So we are doing our four agreement series. And today we're going to be talking about the second agreement, which is don't take anything personally.
Yeah. Just because I called you a fucking bitch. That's my prerogative.
That's because Louis feels like he is a fucking bitch.
Exactly.
So, you know, going back, let's give credit where credit's due. So the Four Agreements was written by Don Miguel Ruiz.
There we go with that. Again, my panties are wet. I'm all, yeah.
Here we are talking about something wholesome and you want to talk about wet panties.
That's what I'm here for.
Don Miguel Ruiz. So he wrote the Four Agreements. So he defines the second agreement as a reminder that nothing others do or say is truly about you.
Absolutely. Even when I compliment you, it's what I get from this.
Yeah. So it reflects their own perceptions, beliefs, and experiences. By not taking things personally, you protect yourself from unnecessary suffering and emotional pain caused by external opinions or actions. So that's the one we're talking about today, and how that applies to recovery. So, when you enter into recovery spaces, you may encounter criticism.
Oh, hello.
There may be skepticism. There may be judgment from other
Hallelujah.
people. Okay, including family, friends, and even yourself.
Preach. Preach.
Let's take it to church.
I know. Let's take this to
Shouldn't be
church.
banging on the table. That's probably really loud.
I know, exactly.
Yeah. So, I'm thinking about a lot of people who like return to use or whatever, like people, when someone reacts negatively or doubts like your recovery, like you have to remember that their response is about them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not about you.
That applies specifically to your loved ones, the people who have gone through the messiness with you. It's like, first off, you've shown them whatever, and it doesn't, their opinions of you, it doesn't negate what you're doing.
That's right.
You get to still do it, but you've got to understand it's like that's their take on it.
That's right.
And
yeah. Like their comments stem from their own fears, right? From their own history, from their own misunderstandings.
And it's the same that you then have to deal with that coming. And it's unfortunate that you have to deal with it coming into the rooms if the rooms are where you're doing your recovery. But a lot of people who have been around for a while have experienced folks coming, going. And a lot of times it's like, that apprehension is, or that pause or that caution is we all have to kind of guard our heart, protect ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's not, for me, I'm passionate about this and speaking about this because I go through times where I don't have the bandwidth. Yeah. And I have to kind of take my time, come back when I'm ready to really kind of show up and be supportive. But, it's what I got to deal with.
Yeah. And you know what's really tricky about not taking things personally is when someone's negative talk matches your own negative talk toward yourself.
Oh, God.
Right? And that is a very subtle thing. And I think that, that's why I encourage, people that I work with to really start to tap into like, what are your values? What are the things that you care about? What are the things that excite you? Right. Because if you can tap into those things, the narrative that you have toward yourself will also change. Right. It's, what is it? A grateful heart.
A grateful heart will never pick up.
Yeah. A grateful heart won't pick up. Right. And so I think that's the part that gets really sticky is like when somebody else's like negative self-talk or whatever it is that matches what's happening inside of you.
Well, that goes back to what I was saying before. It's like for me, that's how I sort through bullshit. Because if you're big and badass enough to open your mouth and regurgitate or even put that out there.
Nonsense.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Then it's important for me. And I think the responsibility is mine to step away and make sure like I don't need to be around. And it's tough in the beginning, especially if you feel like, you don't have that agency but now it's like, come on, I don't like this. Like what's going on. I don't like that. Whatever's going on, you have a relationship with my negative. Picture time.
That you have a relationship with what?
With my negative thoughts. Whatever. Like you're tapping into my anti higher power MO, which is not cute.
Yeah. And here's the other thing I think is
give it to me.
Let's see. I'm thinking here. I'm thinking. So I'm also distracted because now Lewis is taking a picture of me while I'm thinking. Let me.
I see smoke.
You see smoke.
It's coming out of your
from my vape.
Coming out of your headphones. Because you were thinking.
I was thinking. Well, family. That's what I was thinking of. So family. So I think that's a good example of when. You know how we talk about like, well, of course they press our buttons. They're the ones who put them there.
Yeah, they install them.
They installed the buttons, right? And so I think one way of thinking about that is like when, their criticisms or whatever matches what's inside of you, because they're the people you had those experiences with, right? And that's why, one of the things I've noticed with like very toxic relationships is that when people argue and they're in really toxic relationships, they're really tapping into the kind of shit that they know hurts the other person.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I find like folks, this is like when I have arguments with people that I'm really close to, it can get ugly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, and I found myself saying the things that I know are going to like tear the person down, and it's like, and it doesn't feel good. I think the last time
hurt people.
I think exactly, but I think the last time I had a conversation like that was in treatment. One of the guys is like, God rest his soul, he passed away, but he was being a real pain, and it was his last day at it was acceptance place. It was the last day, and so I tapped into the fact that he really had a problem with his age, which he was young. And I just started yelling, you're old and pathetic. And it neutralized him. And so it didn't feel good later. It felt good at the time.
Yeah.
But I don't move through the world that way anymore.
Yeah. And so basically what we're talking about is like one way of not taking things personally is by addressing the stuff that's happening for us, right? Like the vulnerabilities that we have inside of us, right? And part of that is like repairing feelings of shame. We've talked about shame before. I want to pause here.
Yeah.
So many people have read The Velvet Rage. It's an incredible book. It was very timely. It's been, I think, translated into 22 different languages.
Yeah.
It's a great book. I think the guy's name is Adam Downs, I think is his name, if I remember correctly. It's a great book. It's not without its issues. But one of the things that he talks about, actually, it's kind of basically the premise of the book is that a lot of gay men, because it's written about gay men, live with a lot of shame. And it's because we were made to feel shameful, like growing up.
Absolutely.
Society was telling us that we should have shame. And
it comes to us even when it's not direct or obvious. It's just everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so I agree and disagree, right? I agree that there have been discourses throughout history that have kind of placed shame or they've cultivated shame. But here's the thing. I don't think that shame is inherent. I think that shame is in response to something that happens outside of us. And let me be clear about that. So, for example, I can say you are depressed, right? I can say you have depression, right? Or I can say your depression is in response to very shitty circumstances, right? And that the depression is in response to something outside of you. So it isn't that you are and have this thing. It's that you are having a response, no different than the way we sweat when we're hot, right? And I think shame is like that too. And I think it's a subtle perspective on his take of shame. I guess what I'm trying to say and highlight is that shame is in response to a world that, number one, is telling you that you should be shameful. But it's also something that almost, is brought up as a way to protect us from engaging in a world that feels hostile. I'm not saying we should feel shame.
No, exactly.
You know what I mean? What I'm saying is
it's a misguided way of protecting us. I know we're.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm saying here's. I'll put it in a sentence. Shame is not something that's like inherent in who we are. Like you are shameful.
Yeah.
But that shame is in response to something outside of ourselves, right? So part of not taking things personally is in addressing those parts of us that feel vulnerable. And whether it's guilt, whether it's shame, whether it's, like unresolved remorse, right? Part of not taking things personally is in by addressing those things that we have going on with ourselves.
That's why I chose the word awareness, because I think that when I become aware, when I'm not in the dark about things, when I'm not in the dark about who I truly am, as opposed to who I think other people think that I am, but I'm really aware, then I lose the shame. You can't affect, like when I tell my story, when I determine my narrative, but when I do it, I'm good, and there's nothing you can do to me, as much as you might want to.
Right.
Not that anybody's, but what,
right.
Even indirectly.
Right. Yeah. Well, right. And because shame often comes from how we feel about how other people feel about us.
Absolutely.
Right.
Or what we think they feel about us.
Yeah.
Because it's like, we're buying into all that. Perceived.
Right. Yeah. So it's like worrying about how other people think about us. What we perceive that they might, think about us.
Oh, I had some of that. I had some of that yesterday.
Tell me.
Linda Summers, who is our current reigning empress, she did my drag makeup because I performed for mascara yesterday, and she's all, I want you to go to the last show. And so I went to Bo. I don't normally go to bars. I don't perform there or whatever, but I was there, and I get there and I'm thinking, oh my God, I have these other drag queens are going to be judging what I look like or whatever. And so I found a nice corner like I used to do, and I sat there, and it ended up working out. But it was really uncomfortable because I was so concerned about and the few queens that were there that I love complimented me, and I'm like, okay.
No, work. I love that.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Yeah, I mean, here's the thing is that external validation can be very addictive, and in some ways, external validation is necessary.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when you're a baby, when you're a kid, you need the external world to validate you.
It's a great way to break free.
What do you mean?
Okay, so I think about I think about what I was feeling, the discomfort yesterday, and then talking and then getting the compliment. I'm like, oh, okay, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm good.
But here's the thing: is one of the ways to, external validation by itself is not there's nothing wrong with external validation.
No.
But it's when we become reliant on it in order to feel good about ourselves.
Yeah,
right.
I'm all, feed me.
Yeah.
And this is
I live for the applause.
Unfortunately, with drag and performers or whatever, it's
built really on that. Yeah.
When the year that I hosted the show or whatever, thank God I had a relationship with my sponsor where we were constantly talking about what was really going on, because I always joke and say, if you're a celebrity in San Francisco, you're not, especially in the sober community, you're not a celebrity. I'm in a fraction of a corner of the city. And if you're a San Francisco celebrity, that means people in San Francisco know you. But beyond that, but I get excited when somebody recognizes me from somewhere else, but it's a long shot.
Yeah. I think one of the ways that we can address the need for external validation is in finding, this is going back to what I was saying earlier, is going back to what are the things that you enjoy and excite you? What are the values that you have? And when you align your behaviors with those values, there's really no need for external validation because you are cultivating it within yourself. When I know that I'm a man of my word. I know that I can have open and honest conversations with people. When I really tap into that, there's not much need for external validation. Now, let me keep it real. I still have issues with low self-esteem and I deal with confidence stuff. And this is stuff that I've been working on in the last couple of years.
But those are kind of gifts while you're doing that other thing, because they invite humility.
Yeah. Well, here's the other part of that is there have been, to the point of validation, I've had experiences where I've had external validation that I've actually been able to internalize, right? Finally becoming confident about my clinical instincts and my clinical judgment, about how I'm operating in the world, right? I've had the external world validate those things for me. And what's been really fantastic about that is that when I go out and I hear like a shitty thing, I feel shielded by the stuff that I've internalized. Yeah. Right. And I think all of that was made possible because, I was taking, I make it a point to like engage in things that like fill me up.
That fill you up. That's hot. That's hot. It's like I'm so
ridiculous. You're so ridiculous.
You probably
get a job.
You probably knew that it was going to.
I didn't know
when you said fill me up.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, you're so cute.
You're obnoxious.
I'm just exactly. That's what I'm here for. You absolutely need someone in your life who is going to be silly like this.
Yes. Did you have anything else that you wanted to say?
No. I'm just listening and waiting for our next.
Yeah. The next thing was, resilience when there are setbacks.
Yeah.
Right. Resilience when, I keep saying return to use rather than relapse because, when I say return to use, what I am describing is when a person is returning to any type of substance use and that doesn't align with like what they're wanting for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, if a person relapses, they might start to judge themselves or other people, right? Feelings of failure. And when that's happening, you can like recognize, and this is a little bit to like what we were talking about before, like other people's reactions to a person's like return to use or like any kind of setback, right? This is going back to like, their emotions have nothing to do with like your self-worth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
It's a tough one too, because it's like, I think that obviously with drugs or whatever you're doing, it's like, it's affecting your mental state. And so it does not matter. I could be in my own world doing my own thing like it usually is. The person who hasn't relapsed or hasn't returned to use is probably just doing whatever. And a lot of times they're not even thinking about or you come back into the rooms and people don't respond to you in the way that you think they should.
Yeah.
And I'm all, that's not always I could be going through my own personal shit, like my own private Idaho. And I usually will try to, when I see someone, like now that I have more experience at it, try to, make a beeline. Something that I've always done that was really kind of cool is like, if I see you out and about and you haven't made the decision to go back out or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Oh, they did make the decision?
Or whatever, if it's a strong call or whatever, or relapse. I was being nice.
Yeah, sure.
If and you can tell when a person is open to it, but I am going to give you love.
Yeah.
I give you love.
Yeah.
I love you. You know what? The only recovery that I can really kind of have a hand in guiding is my own.
Yeah. I mean, what you're talking about is navigating relationships and recovery.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right?
Not and really not making, I would say, not making their experience and their humanity about me.
You're right.
Yeah, because it's like
Yeah, and I think part of that is when you're navigating relationships and recovery, they can be challenging sometimes.
Yeah.
And part of that is like you might see like old behaviors show up, like old behaviors that you might be trying to move away from or old behaviors that they're trying to move away from. And that can be really just not very productive or healing or whatever, like generative, So, and in those cases, then, like that's when we have to start establishing new boundaries with people, right?
Oh,
like
absolutely.
maybe boundaries you didn't know you needed.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think if you're someone who has returned to use and you're finding it tough to come back into the spaces, we talked about this, I think last couple of weeks ago. If you need to find a different space to do it until you're ready to come back, I mean, you should, there is nothing wrong with branching out. Like if you live in San Francisco, one of the larger cities, we have so many meetings. There's so many.
Over 600.
We have so many 12-step meetings. Then we also have alternatives to that, like refuge recovery and smart recovery and all of those things. And whatever it is that you need so that you can feel good. I mean, because generally what happens, you know, these doubts, these feelings or concern about how people are feeling, it's not going to last if you're doing work. Yeah. If you're doing whatever work is necessary. And as soon as your mind is clear, if you want to return, you can return. But it's like, it's real. It's real when you feel, you know, like how they say feelings are not facts, but it's like, I feel them.
Yeah. You do feel them. And a lot of that stuff can be like really, I don't want to use the word triggers here, but I do think that like rejection or feeling dismissed by people or excluded can be really triggering. Like when people
or debilitating. It's it can make it really hard to kind of
Yeah. And here's the other thing. You know, I know we generally talk about like abstinence only program, like abstinence based programs. And here's the thing. Is, you know, there's research that shows that some people can return to use and use recreationally.
Absolutely.
And, you know, and maybe an abstinence only space isn't the space that's right for you. You know, maybe you need to be around other people who are working like a similar program. Right. I think that's very important. I think it's important to find like your people.
Yeah, exactly. Clear your mind, get to a space so that and have the real conversation and decide, and then you can decide for yourself. Because I've had sponsees who go back out and they're successsul.
Right.
You know, and they're successful. And I'm all, seriously? Seriously, you're successful with that? No.
Yeah, you know that you can. Yeah, I mean, there's someone I know in recovery who, you know, after like years of therapy and their own soul searching, they realize like maybe I'm not an addict or an alcoholic, and so, you know, they drink now, and they're last time we talked, you know, he was saying that he's like, it's not, nothing's gotten out of control, and I'm like, more power to you, you know.
Now, mind you, if you're a new person and you were looking for a reason to do this, this is not what we're talking.
I'm
not
what we're
saying. What we're saying is like it's almost like the decision to open your relationship. You've given
generally. You're not talking about mine.
No. You've given it's generally you've given yourself an opportunity to have the relationship, to do the work, to learn about whatever, and then you make a decision as a result of all this amazing information that you have.
Yeah. 100%.
Absolutely.
Okay. Last thing that I want to talk about.
I love it. Gratitude.
And we're landing on gratitude. Comparing yourself to other people.
It's like them all. They always say, like in recovery, it's like, do not compare your inside to somebody else's outside. I always say it's like the more polished the motherfucker is, the more they've got going on at the surface, and so don't get caught up in
yeah. I mean, and it's really easy, especially in recovery and even outside of recovery spaces, to compare yourself to other people, right? You might be thinking about like the progress they're making in their life or the successes they're having,
absolutely,
or even their setbacks. You know, you might be like, well, I don't have those issues.
Yeah, girl. Yeah.
And I think you know, and it's just like another area of our lives that's like important not to personalize. We can't personalize like what other people are doing in their own lives, right? It's kind of like when we say you don't want to compare your insides with somebody's outsides.
Yeah, it's super important to know that not everybody is able to be as open, as kind of transparent about the things that they struggle with. Because I always say, like, when I'm going through something, you'll know about it when I've gotten to a place where I'm good talking about it. I may have, you know, more will be revealed, and there are some things that come up, and they come up with shame attached to it. And until such time that I've done the work with my sponsor, my therapist, or whatever, I may not be able to talk about it. And I'm real good at putting on a face, you know, because I also, when I go to meetings, I don't cry. It's like I'm going through something or whatever, and my aloofness or whatever, it may give you the impression that the reality of it is like everybody's doing the best that they can, and sometimes that best doesn't look the best, you know. But so in that same vein, it's like, you're doing the best that you can, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try not to take it personally when you give me the business. give me the business. I love that.
Yeah, I mean, I
on
think...
site, maybe.
Yeah.
On site. I told you when I see you on site.
Is that from Medea?
No. Well, I mean, it's like
Tyler
it's
Perry,
in there.
it?
But my drag mom's been obsessed with that because it's like every time she says something, there's these little videos where the guy like does the voiceover, the one where the cat's looking at the dog and kind of creeping up a little, and he says, "Is that maybe?" And runs up and attacks the dog and says, "I told you when I see you on site, on site." No.
I love like animal voiceover videos. Those are so funny.
funny, especially when they really do when they seem like.
Have you seen the Nigerian ones?
No, but I
oh
bet
my
you they're hilarious.
God, there's one. It's a bird, and they're trying to get him to go on a paddleboard, and it's a guy with a Nigerian accent doing the voiceover. It is so fucking good. It's so good. Yeah, it's so very good. I don't want to. I forgot where I was going to go with this. Oh, the other thing that I wanted to say was Ram Dass. So it's such a hippy dippy reference, but Ram Dass was a spiritual teacher, and he talked about like people's life's curriculum. You know how when so he tells a story about how there was this man who came to one of his talks, and he said, you know, my son is a paraplegic, and when we're out in the world, like people look at him and they say things.
You shared this once before, I love it.
I did. Right?
But keep sharing.
Yeah. I mean, it's related. Yeah. And he says, you know, how do I protect him from this? How do I, you know? And Ram Dass said, you can't protect people from the world necessarily. Like, of course, you know that the son is vulnerable, but the takeaway was, per Ram Dass, that this is part of his life's curriculum. Similarly, when I think about like the different paths that I see with people, it's like I have to remind myself, like, their life is the result of like their experiences, exactly. Their history, their access to resources, and this is not to say, like, I'll keep it 100. Like there's one person that like exists in my head rent free who, I used to compare myself to all the time. And, you know, he's someone who comes from a lot of money. He's someone that like everyone fawns over. He's someone who has like access to just about everything. And I used to really get down on myself. And I'm like, why doesn't my life look this way? You know what I mean? And I just had to remind myself, like, that's not my story. You know, like my story is what it is. And the more I fell in love with my own story, you know, like warts and all, like the more I fell in love with my own story, and like the more I tapped into the things that were important to me, there was no need to compare because I was happy with where I was.
Absolutely. I think that what I want to say, what I want to impart to folks, the thing that I remind myself of, I am doing this work for me, and so other people might be doing the same work for themselves. And like I always say, it's like, in the beginning, I was so concerned about what people thought. And then as I found my voice and I got defiant, I told you that I wasn't concerned, but I still wasn't concerned. And as I evolved and got a little more kind of, you know, better with me, I realized that I do care. I absolutely do care. And the reason why I care is because I want to be a thoughtful person, but it doesn't affect what I do next. And so I got to believe that that's what's going on with other people. You're doing what you need to do. And like, perfect example, there was a fellow who didn't understand that a person that they had made plans with was struggling with their recovery. And,
I think I know this story.
And so when they weren't able to follow through, they took it personally.
Oh, yeah.
And it wasn't about them. It was about, but I think what was unfortunate, there was a breakdown in communication, but I'm like, honey, life is happening around us. It's going on. Just because I want things to be, don't take it personally.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's not about you. What I do focus in on is I focus in on the people who make the effort to kind of lift me, to support me, to communicate and to be real. And that works.
Right.
And then I try to give grace to the folks who are working at it, who are trying to get there.
Yeah. There was something and I forgot. One of the bad things about forgetting things on air is that we don't edit out downtime. So
that's why it's like I'm gonna say something while you forget. Girl, it's like bubblegum and popcorn.
I know. And what's so frustrating sometimes is like I'll hear an episode and I'm like, where the hell did that thought go? You know what I mean? What was I thinking about? We were talking about like people like comparing.
We're talking about everything.
Just everything.
Mm-hmm.
It lost me. But we're talking about, in like summarizing all the things that we're talking about, at least for today, we're talking about emotional independence. We're talking about not relying on other people. I remember what I was going to say now.
Mm-hmm.
So the other thing that I wanted to say is that if I am having a reaction, if I am finding myself wanting approval, or that's another opportunity for me to have some self-compassion.
Oh, don't take what you're feeling personally.
Yeah.
Be
nice to yourself.
Yeah, be nice to yourself.
Be nice to yourself.
Like as much as I thought when I came into the rooms that I had to be perfect, because I saw other, because I didn't want anybody to tell me that I didn't deserve to be there, because those voices. And the truth of it is like, I don't have to do anything perfectly. I get to feel what I'm feeling. I get to go through what I'm going through, especially if I'm open to kind of communicate. And thank God for a relationship with a sponsor and friends. The best part about recovery has been getting to be vulnerable and say, I'm experiencing this. Like I've been talking to you a bunch about my meltdown a while back. Yeah. And in the past, I would have been so embarrassed because no, I don't want you to see the slips or the cracks in my facade. I don't want you to see how imperfect I am when I think that I'm supposed to be perfect, and that's nonsense.
That's right. Yeah, you're talking about self-acceptance, which is like another theme of like today's episode, right? It's like self-acceptance. It's I like to think about, a lot of people have done some internal family systems work, but I like to think about like if I had a child and my child was coming to me with like all these thoughts and feelings that I am feeling, what would I say or do for that child?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wouldn't criticize my child. You know what I mean? I would pick him up. I would hold him. I would try to comfort him. I might try to tell him like, hey, it's okay. I love you. Like this is normal and natural, or I might just hold him so that he knows that he's in a safe space, so that he can process what he needs to process. And I think that's the type of love that we need to extend to ourselves.
And it's important. So we're saying don't take anything personally, but if you believe that what the person is giving you is not what you're interested in buying, you get to step away from that relationship. I think that's important too, because it's like, I don't want to just assume everybody's doing their best and we should let them get away with it.
No, exactly. Right. And then that's to the other part about boundaries, right? Yeah. Like we do not have to allow people to treat us however the fuck they want.
Unless we're in bed. Yeah. Then slap me around it. I'm teasing.
Where's
I'm joking.
Louis? There he is. So, where's Louis? There he is. Having boundaries, right? Like if someone, we could benefit by trusting when someone says or does something that is harmful or hurtful. We would benefit by trusting like, hey, that was hurtful. That was harmful.
Absolutely.
I can establish a boundary here. You don't need to develop the thick skin to deal with that with a person. Like that doesn't make you any better or worse. Doesn't make you any better. It doesn't contribute to your healing. So you can establish boundaries and that helps to not take things personally.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And, I think ultimately the other thing that we're talking about is like focusing on our healing.
Yeah. Focusing on your healing.
Focusing on our healing because, we are a recovery podcast and part of recovery is healing. And I think, at least when I think about like my own trajectory, like there have been a lot of times where I'd have to ask myself, like, do I want to suffer or do I want to heal? Is whatever it is that I have going on in my life, is this making me suffer or is it contributing to my healing? And sometimes it does sometimes it does have to be, for me at least, boiled down to just very simple parts.
Right on. I love that.
Yeah.
So the Castro Country Club is a safe and sober community center for all people and a refuge for the LGBTQ recovery community.
We provide programs and services that help change lives. By supporting personal growth.
And our vision is to reduce the suffering of addiction by connecting people to community opportunity and support.
You can find more information, including all the ways to contact us at www.castrocountryclub.org/podcast.
And get new episodes every Monday. Yes, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Wherever you listen to podcasts. Do you know what time it's released on Monday? Is it like a...
Depends. I don't want to say a definite time.
Yeah, we shouldn't. Sorry,
but usually by noon. He's usually really good about getting it out by noon.
Monday, if you want to hear our voices, you will.
Yes.
Because there'll be an episode that's being released. Any final thoughts?
None. I mean, I'm just really excited to be having this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited for our next 2 episodes.
Yes.
All right. We love you. Bye.
Bye.